So, Andrew, thank you so much for spending a few minutes with me in the midst of Global Entrepreneurship Week. You're running an event, a full-day congress actually coming up this Friday. And I'm really interested to talk a little bit about that, but also about the Western Australian ecosystem kind of more broadly. But in the first instance, did you want to just tell me a little bit about this event coming up on Friday that people can still register for?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a congress, which means it is a meeting of all the representatives of the innovation ecosystem across Western Australia. That includes regional arts incubators, mining and resources innovation hubs, cybersecurity networks, and facilitators of accelerator programs and government and philanthropic funders. So it's a really broad range of sector focus, but also the different players in the ecosystem. And this is our once a year opportunity to get together to talk about our shared or aligned visions for the future, priority areas where we might collaborate together, and I guess just sharing news and ideas about the latest trends and programs and things that we're seeing and developing.
And that's really important for the Western Australian ecosystem more broadly because it's seen a lot of growth. Tell me a little bit about how the Western Australian ecosystem is different from other kind of areas in Australia and maybe globally as well.
Yeah, so perhaps a little bit of like the economic and social and geographical context of Western Australia is it is pretty much dominated by one capital city with some relatively small regional towns. So it is much more sort of empty, say, than other states in Australia or even internationally. And it also has an economy that is really heavily currently dependent on mining resources and oil and gas, offshore energy, but is in the midst of an enormous transition towards huge renewable energy projects, production of critical minerals for sustainable new economy, and also new emerging industries around regenerative agriculture, creative industries, and say the blue economy, ocean economy. So it's a very sort of isolated and particular place, Western Australia, and it is also historically, because of its economic strength, had relatively little investment in sort of technological or creative innovation from the government side. But over the last 10 years, there's been a huge amount of ground up growth of the ecosystem. Many of us have really built it from scratch with no sort of government support, which means we have a number of social enterprises, not-for-profits and networks that are extremely resilient. They didn't grow up on millions of dollars of funding from some state or federal government program, but we are now seeing that really come to fruition in that the ecosystem is really leading its own growth and bringing government and industry along with it. So it has really been a significant period of change the last decade, and just the last couple of years, things have really scaled up off the base of, very humble beginnings.
And so what's the role of an organization or a network like Meshpoints, and why is it kind of important to make sure that all of these players, now that they're in this kind of growth phase, are talking to each other and collaborating, and what kind of early value are you seeing from those sorts of conversations?
Yeah, so I think one useful perspective is to consider from the perspective of an entrepreneur or an innovator. If you have a new idea and you know vaguely that there is some support out there for people with new ideas, you may not know how to find the right support, or you may not be aware of what is out there. If we have a connected and collaborative ecosystem of service providers, it means that wherever that innovator or entrepreneur touches first, they will hopefully get routed to the right program. It also means those service providers don't duplicate or compete or have ulterior motives other than supporting a culture of innovation amongst themselves, but especially in the wider community. It means that those, if you're, say, a First Nations entrepreneur in a regional area, these institutions that are brought together by Meshpoints, all the hubs and the universities and the funders, we really are keeping you in mind. We're not just sort of focusing on our area and ignoring the hard to reach places. We are really consciously trying to grow a culture of innovation that is diverse and distributed and really accessible. So I think the main thing is for the benefit of innovators and entrepreneurs. And in the case of this initiative in Western Australia, Meshpoints, it's extremely driven by social, environmental, and community outcomes. So this is not just people chasing billions of dollars as tech unicorns. We are trying to find the next social services innovator and how we can support them. We are trying to find the next product that improves people's lives through medicine or better health outcomes. This is a very sort of broad and socially oriented ecosystem.
And so how can people get involved? And I mean that in the broader sense of the word. If you're someone from industry and you want to get involved, if you're an entrepreneur and you want to get involved, or a business potentially likes what they hear, what's kind of the door to get involved in the West Australian ecosystem?
Yeah, so I'd say that the door is probably through things like Startup News as a news publication, through Meshpoints as a network of those service providers, where you could be referred to the right one, and through the government and government agencies. So what we're aiming to do is align those, the news sources, the networks, and the government policy. So if you're an entrepreneur, I think the way to get involved is by getting in touch with your local co-working space or hub or incubator. I think if you're involved in the business of sort of innovation, then definitely come direct to Meshpoints. And many organizations have taken this Congress as the opportunity to get involved in Meshpoints before signing up as an official partner. So we have more than 50 partners. There's more than 80 organizations attending the Congress. So we expect, by the end of the year, we should have about 80 partners involved.
That's exciting. And obviously with the Congress, by definition, you're hoping to get a whole bunch of fantastic, commitments from people looking to make, impacts into the community. What are you hoping for, the West Australian ecosystem and maybe the Australian ecosystem more broadly? What are you kind of hoping will come out of an event like this, heading towards the event coming up in Melbourne next year? What are those kind of bright and shiny goals that you're hoping to achieve?
Yeah, so as a network, we're sort of also have a sister initiative, which is a fund, and there's an index actually to measure the impact of all our collective activities in Western Australia as a society. So I think there's a few bright, shiny things. One is that we'll have some great representation at Global Entrepreneurship Congress from Western Australia, because we're all lined up and clear on that. I think secondly is for Western Australia that you'll get a fund that we're aiming has $30 million a year coming through it for investment in the ecosystem, that will have a really strong network. And then we'll have this index that measures how we're contributing to a culture of innovation in Western Australia. So that's the sort of bright, shiny thing for WA. And the particular thing that will get us there are little collaborative initiatives. Like currently there's one focused on how do we integrate ESG, sustainability, environmental, social, and governance issues into accelerator programs. So we've got 8 accelerators and incubators all cooperating on how they integrate that. So I think for the entrepreneurs, what's going to come out of it, the bright, shiny thing, is really improved services and programs that they can access. I think the bright, shiny thing for the world is that, as I mentioned, we've really built a lot of this from the ground up without very much government support so far. So I think Meshpoints, the fund, and the index could be really useful models to share with other states and nations around the world.
Thank you so much for spending a couple of minutes with me, Andrew. I really look forward to seeing that massive contingent of Western Australian startup ecosystem community coming to the Global Entrepreneurship Congress in Melbourne next year. All the best for your event on Friday, which people can still register for. Get in touch with Andrew, and looking forward to seeing all of those bright and shiny things come to fruition in the future.
Awesome. Thanks for your time.